My name is Nathan Reed. And for 28 years, my father introduced me to people as my wife's affair child, flushed heartbreak, family dinners, birthdays, holidays. Every single moment of my life carried that label. Relatives whispered about me, cousins avoided me, even my own father looked at me like living proof of betrayal. Meanwhile, my mother spent decades crying silently without defending herself anymore. Then one hospital visit changed everything. Because while my father lay connected to machines after a heart attack, a doctor asked for emergency DNA verification. And 2 days later, a test result destroyed my entire family forever. Because the real liar in our house was never my mother. My name is Nathan Reed. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, inside a home poisoned by suspicion. From my earliest memories, my father treated me differently from my 2 younger sisters. Not openly abusive. Worse, cold, detached. Like he tolerated my existence instead of loving me. When I was 6 years old, I overheard relatives whispering during Thanksgiving dinner. One aunt looked directly at me and muttered, "Poor Robert, raising another man's child." I didn't fully understand what that meant then. But I understood humiliation. And unfortunately, that feeling became a permanent part of my childhood. My father Robert Reed never actually hid his resentment. Especially after drinking. Sometimes during arguments with Mom, he'd point toward me and spit out the same sentence repeatedly. "Every time I look at him, I remember what you did." Mom always cried, always denied cheating, but after years of accusations, even her voice eventually sounded exhausted. By age 12, I finally asked her directly one night, "Am I Dad's real son?" That question shattered her completely. Mom grabbed my face crying instantly. "Nathan, you are your father's child." I wanted believing her desperately. But children trust actions more than words. And my father's behavior screamed the opposite every day. He skipped my baseball games, forgot birthdays, ignored school awards. Meanwhile, he adored my sisters openly. Family photos made it painfully obvious too. Dad always placed an arm around them. Never me. At school, rumors spread because family members talked too much. Kids started calling me, "mailman baby," "affair kid." Eventually I stopped fighting back emotionally. I learned surviving through silence. By adulthood, Dad barely acknowledged me at all unless criticizing something. Especially my appearance. Unlike my sisters, I had darker hair and different facial features. Honestly, even I started questioning things eventually. Maybe Mom lied because she feared losing the marriage. Maybe Dad hated me because deep down he knew truth everyone else ignored. Still, Mom never changed her story once. Not once in 28 years. Then came the family business issue. Dad owned a successful chain of auto repair shops and openly planned leaving everything equally to my sisters someday. Me, I was never included. One Christmas dinner, Dad got drunk enough finally saying it directly in front of everyone. "Why would I leave my legacy to someone who isn't blood?" Silence swallowed the room instantly. My sisters looked uncomfortable. Mom burst into tears. And honestly, something inside me finally died emotionally that night. I stood up quietly and left dinner without saying goodbye. The next morning, Mom came to my apartment crying hysterically. Apparently she begged Dad stopping the accusations permanently. Instead he demanded DNA testing again. Because apparently he requested testing years earlier when I was a baby. But according to him, Mom refused completely. When I asked Mom whether that part was true, she looked terrified for the first time in my life. Then quietly whispered, "Your father never allowed the test happening." I frowned confused. "What?" Mom wiped tears shaking. "Because he already knew the truth would destroy him." That answer made absolutely no sense. And honestly, at the time I thought grief finally broke her mentally. Then 6 months later, Dad suffered a severe heart attack. Everything changed overnight. Despite our relationship, I still rushed to the hospital immediately. Because hatred doesn't erase biology emotionally. Inside intensive care, doctors explained Dad needed emergency surgery urgently. But complications appeared involving inherited medical conditions. One physician asked carefully, "We may need immediate family DNA confirmation for compatibility testing." The room became tense instantly. Dad looked panicked. Actually panicked. Then shockingly, he refused. Completely. Even while lying in a hospital bed connected to machines. I stared at him confused. Why are you refusing? Dad avoided eye contact entirely. Then finally whispered something barely audible. Because the test won't prove what you think. My stomach tightened instantly. Mom suddenly started crying uncontrollably. And for the first time in 28 years, I realized everyone in that room hid something enormous. Eventually my sisters convinced Dad agreeing to the DNA testing because surgery risks became too serious. The wait lasted 48 hours. 48 hours of silence, anxiety, and emotional chaos. Part of me feared confirmation. Part of me feared losing the last fragile piece of identity I still held onto. Then the results arrived, and everything exploded. The doctor entered quietly holding paperwork. He looked confused more than anything. Then calmly announced, "Nathan is biologically related to Robert Reed." Relief hit me first. Powerful relief. But only for 1 second. Because the doctor wasn't finished. He continued carefully, "However, your daughters are not." Silence. Absolute silence. My brain literally stopped processing words. Mom covered her mouth sobbing instantly. My sisters looked horrified. Meanwhile Dad closed his eyes like a man finally crushed by decades of lies. Apparently years earlier, Dad secretly conducted private DNA tests on all 3 children after becoming paranoid about Mom cheating. Results proved I was biologically his son. But my sisters weren't. Not both. Neither. The real betrayal inside our family had nothing to do with me. Mom admitted everything through tears afterward. Years earlier during a temporary separation from Dad, she briefly dated another man before reconciling. Then unexpectedly became pregnant with my sisters later. Dad discovered truth secretly through testing. But instead of confronting reality honestly, he projected all his rage and humiliation onto me, the only innocent child. Because I resembled him most emotionally. Because blaming me felt easier than facing betrayal directly. 28 years. 28 years of punishment for something that was never true. I stared at Dad in disbelief while memories replayed violently inside my head. Every insult, every rejection, every cold glance, all based on a lie he already knew was false. I finally asked the question destroying him completely. Why me? Dad started crying weakly in that hospital bed. Actual broken crying. Then whispered, "Because looking at you reminded me she chose staying with me." At first his answer sounded confusing. Then I understood. I was proof Mom once loved him genuinely before everything collapsed later. And somehow, he turned that into resentment too. Mom begged forgiveness repeatedly afterward. My sisters completely shattered emotionally learning truth alongside me. Because suddenly our entire family identity collapsed overnight. But honestly, I barely heard any of it. I kept mourning something deeper. The childhood I never got. The father I deserved. The love stolen from me. Weeks later after surgery recovery, Dad visited my apartment privately. He looked older somehow, smaller. Then he handed me a thick folder. Inside sat revised inheritance documents naming me primary owner of the family business. But honestly, the money meant nothing by then. Dad whispered emotionally, "I can't undo what I did." No, he couldn't. Some damage lasts forever. Then unexpectedly, I answered honestly, "I spent my whole life trying earning love I already deserved." Dad cried harder hearing that than I'd ever seen before. Today I'm 30 years old. Therapy helped. Time helped. But healing from rejection disguised as truth takes years. As for my father, we speak occasionally now, carefully, slowly, but our relationship will never become normal completely. Because children remember exactly how people made them feel during the years they needed love most. And no DNA test can erase that pain entirely. False accusations inside families can emotionally destroy innocent children for decades. Parents must never project their pain, insecurity, or relationship problems onto their children. And sometimes the people claiming to know the truth are actually hiding from it themselves. Children deserve love, protection, and certainty, not punishment for adult mistakes. If this story touched your heart, thumbs up, like this video. Bell, subscribe for more emotional stories. Speech balloon, comment below. Do you think some parents damage children permanently because of unresolved pain and suspicion? Flushed heart break.